Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people from all walks of life. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest experienced an unthinkable tragedy, and when she could have become a victim or lived the rest of her life with anger, she decided to focus on helping others so that they wouldn't have to go through the same experience as her and her family. Please help me welcome Lindy Brown. Lindy, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am well, and I am so excited to have you on today. You have some really tough things to talk about, but some really important things to talk about. And so I'm really excited that you are here today, willing to share some of your story and some of the things that you're putting together for the benefit of others. I don't want to do all the talking though, so I would love it if you would start just by telling the audience a little bit about yourself. Tell me what brought you here today. What in your heart made you feel like you needed to come and share some of your story?
Okay, so let me see where I want to start.
Okay. Take your time.
Okay. There's a lot of emotion in this, right? So Claudia, I really wanted to come on and talk with you because there's experiences that I've had happen to me in the last 3 years and even 8 years that I really feel led to use my voice to share with everyone, because I'm hoping that it's going to help save somebody from going through what I went through, and also help save other people from experiencing trauma and PTSD in the workplace as well. Okay. So,
I know this is really hard for you. I have been through some tough things in the workplace myself, and that's one of the reasons that I was so happy to have you come on. I've shared some of my story, but as a police officer, I experienced a traumatic incident. I was kidnapped and assaulted, and there were times after it happened that I laid on my kitchen floor and cried and just wanted it to all go away. And I now live with PTSD and a host of other things because of what I went through. And there were moments that I would lay on that floor or lay in bed and I wouldn't want to be around anymore. So I hear you. And I would love if you would share a little bit about your experience with understanding PTSD, how you came to understand its potential consequences, and what it can lead to.
sure. First, I just want to say that these are my experiences and my understanding of things. I am a mother. I am a stay-at-home contractor. I have these experiences because just my life. So um, I'll go ahead and get started. Um, I was married for 20 years to a man that was in the military, National Guard. He became a law enforcement officer and was in law enforcement for over 10 years in state patrol, and very dedicated to his job and to his family, to his country. Um, a wonderful man. He was there for everybody to, high speed chase to getting somewhere for medical attention to helping people that were going through suicidal situations, and just a great responder, always there for his friends and always there in the beginning for family. as the events that he had happened during his years as highway patrol, in looking back at the incidences, in the last 5 years of his life, they became more and more critical, traumatic incidences. And this was something that was occurring before COVID happened. And looking back, I can see how it affected his relationship in our family, which affected me and how I responded to events. He became verbally abusive with me and the girls. I have two girls that are now young adults, and it was really hard because not knowing who was going to walk in the door, if it was the helpful dad, the helpful husband, or if it was the one that was so affected by PTSD that was just mentally maxed out to not be able to work through situations that were just daily family occurrences, right? Like I can give you examples, but just situations where maybe something was out of place or a question was asked on something that was just a general easy question that normally people that don't have PTSD can just critically think through that and give a rational answer. But the PTSD was so complex at the end that he was going from 0 to 160. There was no thought process between that because the brain doesn't work that way with PTSD. Um, that it would be just everything was critical within our home and in our space because it was very close to him. So I give that information because that that was affecting our relationship, and I didn't feel safe in the environment anymore. I started looking at ways to protect me and my girls because he was becoming more volatile, right? So I say this with all respect because I know he was very ill. Um, so I had gone and looked for assistance just in my own understanding because I'd never looked into divorce before. But I went to talk to somebody because I needed to look into protecting myself and my family. Um, in doing that, he had noticed that I worked at home, but I went for appointment at my lunchtime. He confronted me about it when I got home. It was on one of his days off. And he confronted me with that and asked me what I was doing. I had locked my phone so he couldn't just look at my phone because I had contacts in there for the lawyer. I hadn't set up anything with her. I hadn't set up any type of, I don't know what they call it, a rider or anything like that to save her services.
A retainer.
It felt very bad and just not what I wanted to commit to or anything. But I needed knowledge. I needed to understand what that looked like and what I needed to do. So anyway, when I got home, he confronted me. We started arguing, and I let him know that I had sought counsel just to have an understanding of what I needed to do because he wasn't wanting to seek counseling. It had been something we had talked about many, many times over the years. And many people had approached him about getting counseling, but there's such a stigma in law enforcement to get assistance with mental health that would become very angry and let me know that there's no effing way he would do that. He would lose his job, but first he would lose his credibility as a police officer. Though he was that guy that was responding all the time, answering the call for additional assistance, overtime, everything. And they even talked about that at his service. And I'm getting ahead of myself because, but they talked about that he was that guy all the time. So he didn't get help. It became worse. That day we argued. He left the house. He had been drinking. Drinking was his method for coping. Unfortunately, drinking didn't help him because he was an alcoholic and he was high functioning. He could drink and he never would get the buzz off of it. He would never get what he needed for the release in his brain. Um, and so anyway, he left. He was drinking. I was in the kitchen because I didn't know who was going to walk back through my door. And my girls were, my one daughter was home, my other one wasn't home. So he came home and he stood in the doorway and he put his arm on the door jamb and he just looked at me and he's like, Lindy, I love you. And I said, I love you too. And he seemed like himself and he asked me to go for a drive and that's how we handled conversations. We always went for a drive because it was a place we could both unplug and just talk. So we went for a drive and um, he went from rational thinking and talk conversation to incredibly irrational conversation, accusations, wanting to know why things happened in our marriage, why things were occurring, and then back to rational, and then irrational again of like why our relationship wasn't working, why he couldn't go to counseling, why he was doing the things that he was doing. So anyway, it was about an hour drive. But before we left, I had told my daughter that we were leaving and going for a drive. She was 15 at the time, and her face was horrified, and she was afraid for me to leave with him. I didn't feel afraid because I'd been in it for so long. I didn't recognize additional signs. I look back now and see that, but she was very afraid and she asked me not to leave. And I told her that we were just driving and my phone was with me and if she needed help, she could call. And anyway, things you look back on, right? So we got back to the house and he pulled in the driveway, but he didn't pull in the parking place. He just left the truck running and he started just making conversation about things that didn't make sense. Like, we live on an acreage, and he looked around and he's like, what do you need to know about here? He had told me that he was going to go get an apartment the next day. We were going to split assets, everything. That's where I thought we were at. And I said, well, if I have questions, I'll just ask you. And he said, no. What do you need to know before I leave? And I said, I don't know what you mean, but I'm like, there's a lot of things around here I don't know how to do because he handled all the hay and equipment and everything. So it didn't make any sense to me. So he said, he asked me, and he said, I'm doing all of this for you. I'm doing all of this for you and the girls. You know that, right? That's what I've done all this for. And I said, well, I don't understand because we're doing this together. This is something we had wanted to do for years. And, I don't know, like 20 years we wanted to do it and have a place on the country. And he said, no, this is all for you. And I said, no, this is together. We're doing this together. And he said, and he stopped and he said, what the fuck are you saying to me? And he reached in the console because he always carried his sidearm with him. It was just his MO, being an officer and everything. And he put it in his lap, which wasn't uncommon when he would argue or anything. It was just he always had his weapon with him. I didn't think anything about it. And I said, well, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. And he's like, all of this I've done for you. And you need to get out of the truck so I can take care of this, or I'm going to take care of it right here. And I had that feeling that something was really wrong. Something had really gone wrong and something was going to happen. And I said, you need help? And I'm going to call 911. And I have my phone and I dialed the number and he said, it's too fucking late for that. And he pulled up and he shot himself in the forehead. As I was stepping out of the truck, I saw everything. And the 911 operator got him. Um, he was incredibly robotic when all of that was happening. Ever since he said for me to get out of the truck, it was like uh, very robotic. He was not there. Uh, yeah. Um, so everything, Claudia, everything slows down. It was like a film that was on slow motion. So I'm going to fast forward now, um, just in respect of everyone else and my boundaries too.
Mhm.
So I have a lot of thankfulness in what happened after this because my daughter, who was home, I went to find her after I talked to the 911 operator. Um, and she was in the shower. She didn't hear a thing. She didn't see a thing. And I just thank God for that.
Mhm.
Um, so that's what happened. And where the PTSD that I have came from. Um, so, I'm not sure where you want to go with this.
Well, first, I'm so sorry for what you went through
Thank you.
and for your loss. And I know that what you're doing now is going to help prevent this from happening to other people. Um, but I think it shows not only about PTSD, but also about mental wellness and men and law enforcement and military, you know, not wanting to take steps to try to heal or try to work on um, issues that may be occurring or, trauma from critical incidents, secondary trauma that they've experienced. So, first, I would like to ask, how are you doing today?
Claudia, I'm doing great. I'm doing great today. It's something that has taken time. It's been 3 years, which I know is a short amount of time. There's times when it feels like it was a really long time, and there's times when it just is so good that it's been quick, right? But um, I really, in my journey, I feel a calling to share this experience to help other people, and so I want to share what happened, how the journey happened for me.
Mhm.
So it was about a month or so, within a month of of the event when Jeff passed, that I actually did involve myself with a counselor. I went to a psychiatrist. I got my girls in right away, which as a mom, I think we do that. We take care of our
Mhm.
kids first, right? But I didn't feel ready. But I don't think I think that's a lie because that I was telling myself to try to protect what was going on in my head.
Mhm.
Um, I have to tell you, I couldn't sleep for days afterwards, just because when I would try to sleep, it would just replay in my head like a bad movie. No matter what, I couldn't shut it off. Um, so I did end up going to a psychiatrist. I was fortunate that I could go to, because he was a law enforcement officer, I could go to our state's psychiatrist that's used by law enforcement. And I wanted to go to that doctor because he understood A-type personalities and
Mhm.
where my husband would have been coming from in all of the events that had happened in the buildup. Um, it was extremely beneficial to me. I saw the doctor for every week for, I think it was like 8 months, and then I went to like every other week and then every month or something. I saw him for a year. Um, I had asked him, when will I know? And he said,
Mhm.
you'll just stop coming, Lindy. And I loved his candor with his experience with my questions, because I needed to understand things about PTSD. I needed to understand why some of the things had built up, and all of those chemicals in your brain that um, build up from seeing events like that, not only because of what he went through, but because of what I was experiencing. So it's kind of like a dual help for me
Mhm.
in healing. And there's many things I still go back and think on that he told me, because as you heal, you go through different gates. So yeah, that was really, really good. Now COVID had happened, and shutdown happened right before, because it was 3 years ago this
Mhm.
week that he passed. And so the shutdown had happened. So I had been involved in church. I have a strong faith um, in the Lord, and um, but with COVID, the churches were shut down.
Mhm.
Communications were pretty much shut down, unless you can talk on the phone.
Right.
But anyway, so it was about, let me think, 8 months or so, or it was longer than that. But things started opening back up, and then we got back involved in church and our community at church, which was really a blessing for me. And at the time, I was still having counseling, but just having that community of friends, people around me in my neighborhood, like, we live out in the country, but our neighbors are just wonderful people. And I have a neighbor that came down and offered to help me learn farming if I wanted to learn that. So I stepped up to the plate and said, I love living out here where I live, and it's a blessing to live out here. I need to learn. And so he's like 76, and he just is the best teacher. He's an amazing man. So, yep, I learned how to run the tractor and do hay and spread manure, and it was an incredibly sharp learning curve. But you know what? That summer, that's what I needed. I needed to be able to do something that was very methodical and
Mhm.
didn't require a lot of extra brain. I needed to be able to focus on that thing,
Right.
and all that extra thinking that was going on. It was just so helpful. It
Mhm.
was so beneficial. So yeah, that was really, really good. So um, what else? We got involved with uh, a group of widows, officer widows, um, which is a club that you definitely don't want to be a part of, but it's fortunate that we have each other, and they're
Mhm.
wonderful people. Reached out to me, and so I got involved with them, and they're wonderful ladies. They got me involved with Blue Help and First Help,
Mhm.
which is just an amazing organization. First Help has a get together every year for families of law enforcement that have passed from suicide. And unfortunately, I'm just going to add this, that many organizations like Blue Help, or even our state governments and federal government has recently changed their idea, but the state follows the idea that anyone that dies by suicide in law enforcement is not an active duty death. Though it is caused by active duty
Mhm.
events, it is the way that our systems are set up right now. So it's just the way it is right now. So First Help honors the officer for the life that they lived and the work that they did, and the families and what the families have sacrificed for the life that the officers felt led to lead. I mean, these men and women that are in law enforcement, you know, Claudia, have a calling to
Mm.
be that protector for society and to give us our freedoms and protect. Um, it is a higher calling. And unfortunately, our organizations, and this is something I'll talk about in a little bit, we don't do a good job as a society or the organizations in protecting and serving them and supporting them as law enforcement officers. Um, but we'll talk about that later. So, um, yeah, so that's how I got to where I am right now. And it was probably 6 months ago that I just felt like myself. I felt like I've moved through this veil of grief and fog and not knowing really who I was to knowing now who I am. And knowing what that God has a big plan for me to be a voice for the people that are in law enforcement, that because of the way that everything is structured, the old stigma of put your belt on and move on, push it
Mhm.
down and move on with your job after you go through these traumatic events, is not the answer. We need to be supporting them. So, yeah.
I know one of the things that's very important to you is being proactive and having proactive resources versus reactive resources. So, will you talk a little bit about what, if anything, you're working on or doing that is proactive officer
Sure.
wellness?
I'd love to. So, um, I want to talk a little bit about the reactive part because I think people need to understand where we're at in our abilities to help. So many law enforcement agencies have more of a reactive model, which,
Mhm.
if you think about it, what do police officers do? And also firefighters and EMTs and dispatch, right? They are in a reactive mode. They react to critical situations. And
Mhm.
so it makes sense the organization has been set up that way to be more reactive to help the officers, EMTs, firefighters. So there are critical incident teams that happen. So let's say that an officer is involved in a traumatic car accident and there's multiple fatalities. Maybe they were involved where there were people that were actually dying, but they couldn't save them, right? I mean, those are all real
Mhm.
situations. Um, and so what the critical incident teams do is they come together. They have, like for our state, I can talk a little bit about it. They have an critical incident team that has a counselor with a emotional support animal, and then another group comes in that are also like the state psychiatrists. So they come in as counselors, and then they have the team come together. They bring together all the first responders, not just the troopers, but any first responder that was involved in that incident, EMTs, firefighters, county officers, city officers, and they have a debriefing and they talk through what happened.
Mhm.
They do that within 72 hours. They try to do it very quickly within 24 to 72 hours because the chemicals in your brain, the cortisol levels in the brain, once that 72-hour mark comes about, they change the makeup of the brain. And so that time frame is critical in order to prevent PTSD from setting in from the incident. So that's what those critical incident teams are. They are reactive and they're necessary. It is crucial that we have those. Um, so proactive is a model that is starting to come about and spread in law enforcement. And it's really exciting because, like I talked about before, having a model that's set up to support and protect our officers and first responders, we do it in other areas of our life. We do it with our kids, we do it with ourselves, right? In other areas, but not in law enforcement. So it's more of a daily wellness model. Um, I came about this when we went to the First Help conference.
Mhm.
Um, First Help had a guest come, and the guest was Neil Gang, who's a chief of police out in California. And anyway, he came down and he talked about the Asher model that he has put together, and it's just a model, right? It's a model that works and is spreading in law enforcement. It's not the only model, but it's a wheel that's working. So
Mm-hmm.
my challenge is take it and make it your own, right? You don't have to use it exactly, but it's working. So getting a model in place that is a daily activity for law enforcement agencies is critical. Now, Neil talks about it on podcasts. He talks about it on YouTube. I reached out to him to ask him if I could talk about it a little bit. It's called the Asher Method. He
Mm-hmm.
said, absolutely. He said, point them to my page, point them to my podcast. His podcast is called the Six Pillar Podcast. He talks about it in depth. Most of his conversations on YouTube that I saw, and not all of them, and not speaking as an expert, are really talking about how to implement the model and get it set up in your agency, which I just challenge these leaders to do because it's a top-down effort.
Mm-hmm.
Change has to come from the top. I do have my certification in Pro-Sci, which is change management, and you have to have it top-down.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that people don't realize is even though you have some leaders that are top-down, if you have leaders in the middle that have the old mentality, it blocks every change that you want to have happen. So it has to be all the way through, and you have to get support from all your levels of leadership, and then also asking the officers, right? Is this working?
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling that we're supporting you? And actually, sincerely getting the answers in a method that is truly sincere and getting the answers and showing them the change, right? But it can happen. The change is happening everywhere. Like out in California, it's spreading. So with the wellness program, they have many different attributes to it, but one of them is, and it's pretty exciting. So they have counseling. They have peer counseling, but they have counseling that's not on the record because
Mm-hmm.
let me tell you that, and I know that you know this, Claudia, but the things that these guys go through and women go through on a daily in their job aren't things
Mm-hmm.
that you can train at the academy for. And no one is prepared to pick up remains of people. I mean, they're humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these people are human. So having somebody to talk to about that is critical. They also have a chaplain that's part of their group that actually goes out just to talk and hang out on calls and be a part of their group
Mm-hmm.
as a support that isn't like, oh, somebody's in trouble, they're with them. They're just there to support. It's actually support. They also implemented a daily physical fitness as part of their active daily life. So when you go to work, you actually get time to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And they have exercise programs provided out there. So one of the things I saw was it's called First Gravity, I think is the name of it. Her name is Paige that founded that. It is an online yoga for law enforcement, and it's huge. And I asked her if I could provide her information, so I'll get you those resources. And there's a few others too that I've come across. Another one that Neil was promoting out on, and follow him if you have LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
He's out there and he promotes many different types of wellness for the officers, but they have like a fight club. Many people need physical exertion, right? And if you want that, it's available. I mean, all these different ideas and ways to help our first responders just with a daily. Why wouldn't we support them? Why wouldn't we give them that? They give us so much. They protect us in our regular daily lives. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And so, oh, I know. One other thing I wanted to share is what I've done, because after my husband had passed, it was about a year and a half in, and I reached out because I just felt I needed to know what's being done to support the officers, right? So, and the troopers. So I went and talked, I got an appointment with our state commissioner for the Department of Public Safety, and I went down and I talked with him. And he shared with me the critical incident team information. I met our critical incident team lead, and she is just phenomenal. She's wonderful. Um, so I got kind of a baseline of where everything was at, and I let him know, I'm like, I'm not in a place that I can come and help right now. But I know that I'm being called to come and help, and I don't know what that looks like or when that's going to be, but I want to come back and talk with you when I'm ready. And he said, Lindy, you come back because we'll have a place for you. So about it was about a month ago, Claudia. It was right after I had reached out to you, after I felt that I was being led to get involved and I was ready. Um, I reached out to the commissioner again, and we had a meeting, and it was really, really good. We talked about where it's at right now as a reactive model, um, how they're working to get to a proactive model. But there's a lot of resistance and a lot of just, I think, education that needs to happen, and maybe just a different idea, right? Of this is a method that will work and how to implement. So um, he let me know that he has my full support to speak on this and to move forward, and the DPS's support. So I'm really excited. I don't know if you can tell, I'm really excited to be a part of that and come alongside of them, to give them resources to help them, and however they need it. So I actually have had some texting conversations with our critical incident team support person, and we're going to get together in about 2 weeks to talk about this proactive model. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting because I just challenge everyone to just think about that. How can that become a part of the daily for law enforcement? How can you get them involved in making it a daily?
I love it. And, I think it's something that really can become even bigger, because for all of us, no matter what you do, we should focus on taking care of ourselves in a proactive way on a daily basis. But I love that you mentioned first responders, and you said not just officers, but firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, because they see some of the worst as well and also carry that trauma. What does it feel like for you? How empowering is it for you to be able to take your experience and be a part of this proactive measure moving forward?
It is really exciting, but I feel called to do it. I told you that I have a strong faith,
Mm-hmm.
and I just feel like it's time. Mental health is just so incredibly important, and we need to help these people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just I'm just helping how I can, and I feel like we need to be using I need to use my experience. I'm going to speak about myself. I need to use the experience that I went through to be a voice for the people that can't speak about it or make a change. And that's where I am. So it feels fantastic to be used this way. Um, yeah, and I wouldn't be out here without Jesus. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just incredible
Mm-hmm.
to be in the space I am.
I want to say, just as a quick disclaimer, if you or anyone that you know is in a situation where you feel like there is imminent danger, please call 911 or 988. Get those resources as quickly as you can. Lindsay, you have shared some amazing things and some very emotional things. So I want to take us down a different road, to put a smile on everybody's faces before we head out today. And I want to talk to you about tattoos. Now, I am actually in a hoodie today because it is a little bit chilly willy here in Colorado. Um, so I can't show any of my tattoos, but I have a bunch. Now, I know that you don't have any tattoos. However,
I know.
you are getting one next week. So,
Yeah.
girl, you need to tell us what it is, what inspired it, and where it's going.
Okay. So I really felt like I needed to do this. So I started reaching out to some tattoo artists, but I started just getting ideas for a design and what I really wanted to have. Just from what I've gone through and where I'm at with my faith. And so I'm really excited. I'm getting a lion. It's a lion head,
Mhm.
but it'll be on my shoulder blade, um, as big as they can make it. I don't know, 8 by 10, whatever. I'm gonna go big or go home. Because if I'm
I
gonna
love
do it,
it.
I just don't want to do it twice, right? So, and then I'm also going to get some writing in Greek,
Mhm.
of I belong to Christ, and then Lord of Hosts on my arm. So, yeah, next week is going to be a big long day.
Uh-huh.
My first tattoo. Go big or go home. I'm going to do it.
Uh, if I may ask, so you have
Yeah,
an artist picked out, obviously. What city are you going to? You don't have to name names if you don't want, but where are you going?
sure. Yeah. So I am going to Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay, that was unexpected.
I know, right? Gonna do a little bit of travel, but it's going to be a really great trip. I feel like this is just a part of my healing journey,
Mhm.
and it's going to happen. So,
There is nothing better than a good tattoocation. So that I believe in. Are you nervous at all? Do you have any nerves about it? Or are you just ready to jump in and sit for probably a good 6 hours?
girl, I have to tell you, he told me it's going to be at least 8 hours. So, but you asked me if I'm nervous or anything. I have to tell you, I think my friends and family are more nervous for me. I don't feel nervous at all. I feel ready. I feel fine with it. I just want the ink. I'm like, get
Yeah.
me the ink. I was making jokes with my friends that and my girls that I'm gonna have to send them to school so they can learn how to ink because I was having such a hard time finding an artist that would say yes. So,
Well, if you ever need an artist recommendation, I have some strong people that can do a lot of different styles. I expect updates.
okay.
I want to see what this looks like. So, where can people find you, Lindy? So, if they want to hear more about your story, if they've been through something similar and just need somebody to lean on or talk to, if somebody wants to learn a little bit more about the programs that you've spoken about, I will have those resources as well. Or if somebody wants to follow along on the tattoo journey, where can they find you?
Okay, so not a super big social media person, but they can find me at on Instagram at Lindy B777, and I'd be happy to talk. Happy to talk.
Awesome. Lindy, you have been a joy, a pleasure. Um, I really deeply appreciate you being so willing to share your story, really for the first time in such a grand way. And you did it spectacularly. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. And I can't wait to see and hear what's next.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you for having this podcast. You're amazing yourself. I just really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media so you'll never miss what's going on. Remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.